For 90% of Indians, the first car was the Maruti. And that was like getting a house. Maruti was like a present from a mother to her departed son.
Unfortunately, Sanjay died. And that was a big blow to Mrs. Gandhi. That's why she decided to deviate from all ideology, all policy, and set up a car manufacturing company. Nobody expected this car company to succeed. Suzuki, for some reason where he saw something which nobody else saw, that India was potentially a huge market in the future. That mother's dream had to come true.
Had to come. Even though you have had a spotless career, but you were actually prosecuted by the government for doing your job. CBI had put multiple cases on you for decades, basically.
They lasted in court for about 20 years. Mr. Suzuki was tremendously hurt.
Yes.
He said, I have worked with so much trust and so much commitment to India. What happened to me was largely because some politicians thought they had a right to get some benefits from Maruti. I had always taken the view that I will not allow anything to be done which will in any way harm the interests of Maruti, either in the short term or the long term. My prostate cancer was diagnosed in 97. I think maybe the stress of all this may have accelerated or caused the prostate cancer. I don't know. I also believe that in this country, by and large, the truth ultimately prevails.
My guest today is R.C. Bhargava, chairman of Maruti Suzuki, India's biggest car company. He joined a startup that nobody believed in an industry that didn't really exist. CBI cases, political persecution, 20 years of fighting a system that wanted him gone. But he didn't break, he didn't leave, and at 92, he is still the chairman. Today, we get into all of it. How he built it, what it cost him, and what it actually takes to do something that nobody thought was possible. Let's be honest for a second. The secret sauce isn't really for everyone. It's for people who want to grow continuously to achieve their potential. So if that's you, maybe you should subscribe. So for me, it's personally very exciting to talk to you, uncle, as we've decided to call you, and what I do call you in real life. And I just want to start from before Maruti. You were in the IAS. You were a joint secretary. Of what were you the joint secretary?
I was joint secretary in the Ministry of Power, and then I became joint secretary in the Cabinet Secretariat.
Got it. So that's a very high position in the IAS. I know you won't like to say that, but it is. You had a good career. You were 47 at the time. And this idea came up, which I would like to understand more about India building a car company, car for the people kind of thing, a bit like a Volkswagen kind of thing, I think. How did this idea come about firstly in India? What was the thought at that time in India with the government, with Indira Gandhi, Sanjay Gandhi?
Well, Maruti did not come about because there was a sudden change in policy of the government of thinking that, suddenly we should have good private cars for people, because those were days of, I think, the height of socialism. And cars were right at the bottom of the heap as far as priorities of planning were concerned.
Right.
Maruti came about because Sanjay wanted to make a small car.
Right.
And he had a special position.
Yes.
Unfortunately, Sanjay died. And that was a big blow to Mrs. Gandhi. That's why she decided to deviate from all ideology, all policy, and set up a car manufacturing company. The circumstances in which this was set up, everybody thought that this was a political stunt. There were accusations that this is to recover the money which Sanjay has invested in the company, which is all rubbish. She sought advice from Arun Nehru, as to what should be done to make this company a success. Maybe it's the first time somebody thought of making a public sector into a success. I mean, specifically at that level.
Yes.
And Arun advised her, firstly, get foreign technology, get a foreign equity partner. And the volume should not be less than 100,000 cars a year. That's how this project came into being. But the fact is, nobody expected this car company to succeed. The foreign companies who were invited to give technology and participate in equity all actually did not agree to put in any cash equity. They said, we'll give you our used dies and give you equipment which has been in the factory, old equipment.
Old equipment.
Suzuki, for some reason where he saw something which nobody else saw, that India was potentially a huge market in the future. And as he said, when he met Krishnamurti and me for the first time in Tokyo in 1982, he said, I think I can work with these two guys.
Got it.
So without doing any further due diligence or finding out anything more about public sector, cars, everything in India, he said, go ahead, I'll do it. That's how it came into being.
So I want to go a little deeper into that, Uncle. What's so interesting is, therefore, Maruti was a present from a mother to her departed son, in
Correct.
a way. It was an emotional
Absolutely.
gift, an emotional action, which allowed her to, you're saying, waive a lot of the current rules of foreign direct investment and joint venture.
It was
And
never done in public sector.
never before done. So when she thought of this idea, and like you said, she asked Arun Nehru, who gave her very good advice, it seems. And she chose V. Krishnamurti. And then how did you come into the mix?
Krishnamurti knew me from the days when I was joint secretary in the energy ministry.
Right.
So 81, I completed 2 years in BHEL. And I was on deputation for 2 years. So I was out. I was on leave waiting a posting. That is when Maruti came along. So Krishnamurti said, why don't you come and join me in Maruti? So I said, why not? It was a year's deputation. So I joined him.
So he called you and said, join Maruti.
It was a 1 year deputation to start with.
And what would that mean exactly? What did you have to do in that 1 year deputation?
That was when the company was starting. So the tasks involved selecting a collaborator, selecting the product to be manufactured, getting the license agreement signed, the joint venture agreement signed, simultaneously setting up the entire organization of the company, not only for the production side, but for marketing, sales, spare parts, finance, HR, all of that had to be done.
I just want to understand a little more about your mindset then. Because was it seen as a risky entity? You said before that nobody thought it would succeed because of the history of PSUs, and the birth of this project also was a very emotional birth and not a conventional birth, I think is the way to say it. But that didn't deter you from saying, okay, I'm going to join this startup.
See, Mukul, my real decision had to be made at the end of 1 year.
Got it.
Because while you're on deputation, you have your feet in both boats and you can jump either way.
You could test the waters.
So you're just testing things. But after 1 year, the government gave notice that now you decide whether to come back to the service or take voluntary retirement and get absorbed in Maruti.
Right.
That was the moment of choice.
Yes.
And there, several factors weighed with me. But the most important was that my future. Despite all the glamour, which you've obviously thought joint secretaries are very powerful and all of that, the money which you earned was a pittance. To survive in Delhi with my 3 children, my wife had to take up a job and work, otherwise we couldn't have put these children through school.
Right.
I didn't have money, 5,000 rupees, 10,000 rupees to put down for this plot of land when it was being allotted. My wife had to contribute to that.
This house.
This land for this house.
Right.
She had to contribute because I was asked to pay 10,000 as part of the joining the housing society.
Right.
I didn't have 10,000 rupees. That was the situation. The pension in government those days was very little. I had 10 more years to go for retirement. So I said, what will my future be? How will I survive? The only opportunities for employment those days, there was no private sector much actively happening then, was liaison officers of some of these big Marwadi companies. Unfortunately, my mental makeup was such, I thought that I just would be a total failure if I tried to become a liaison officer. So I said, what will I do? So that was the main consideration. But there were other considerations. For example, the project was almost off in the sense we had found Suzuki, we had signed an agreement with Suzuki, we were working to start by the end of the year. I said, if I quit it this time, how will the Prime Minister look upon it? And if she doesn't look well on what I do, what is this career I'm looking for that I'll become cabinet secretary or something? I may end up in some absolutely out of the way job somewhere in the States.
In the middle of nowhere.
So why should I take that risk? Lastly, the choice of a Japanese car manufacturer was to a large extent what I personally had pushed for. Because, the Japanese at that time were dominating the global car industry.
Yep.
USA, Europe had put quotas on import of their cars because they couldn't compete. We got one of those companies as a partner.
So you're getting the global leaders in the technology at the time to come
They
to
were
India.
leaders in
Toyota,
not only technology,
Honda.
but low-cost quality manufacturing.
Right.
So I said, while everybody thinks this will fail, maybe it will not fail. And even if it doesn't fail, working for some years with Suzuki will give me knowledge and insights, which will probably become a marketable commodity when I retire in 1992.
And that was what we were looking at your
So
return.
looking at all those factors, I said the better option, take absorption, resign from the IAS.
And, you were saying that even before Suzuki, for that 1 year period that you and Mr. Krishnamurti were there, you had talked to many other companies. Can you just take us through that a little bit to understand how, even getting Suzuki was a huge achievement?
So before we came on the scene, government itself had got about the process of selecting a partner. And a team from the government had gone all over Europe. And they had picked Renault as a partner. And that selected the Renault 18 as the car to be made in India. We had actually got to that stage. When we came on the picture and we looked at what Renault had offered and went into some more details and got some more clarifications, we were convinced it was an impossible project. That big car of 1800cc.
1800cc?
The Renault 18.
I didn't know it was 1800cc. That's a big car.
Was not a car which would possibly sell in India.
Gas guzzler.
The ministry guys who were selected said, no, India has large families. We have joint families. Therefore, you need a car which can seat 5-6 people.
Right. So interesting.
So, what we decided is that we would do a market survey. I think the first time, certainly a public sector company even thought of something like asking The consumer, what do you want? And that market survey was done on a large professional scale, on a pretty large scale.
Amazing.
It came up with the answer. 90% or more of driving by Indians is within city limits. Nobody goes out. Same percentage of people, when they use the car, there are less than four or less people in the car. The customer wanted a modern, low-cost, fuel-efficient car. All these did not apply to the Renault 18. But how to convince the government? So then we went, and by that time, Narendra Tiwari had become the industries minister. The earlier industries minister had been shunted out.
It's so funny because on one side, you're trying to build this real company to solve a real problem. And on the other side, the government is going through its own chakkars, and they are your masters. So
that's how the government works.
Yes.
So then we went to government, to Mr. Tiwari, and said, sir, we have a problem. He said, what is it? He said, the mandate of Sanjay Gandhi was to build a people's car. The Renault 18 is not a people's car. So are we not doing something which is going to embarrass you politically? Because you're doing something which is not what he wanted. Won't Mrs. Gandhi feel unhappy that you've forgotten her son's message? And I said, we found a car amongst the Japanese small cars. We'll go to Japan and find a small car for you. The market survey which we have done also shows people want a small car which is likely to succeed. So why not go to that? He thought and said, yes, go ahead. That's how it changed. So that's how we got that Renault thing dropped out. And it's interesting, these Renault guys, they had a local representative, a French guy here posted here, an Indian guy posted here. The Indian guy used to be frequently sitting in our offices. And one day he came and said, look, what are you guys doing trying to find other cars and all that? The decisions already been taken, will be taken in the ministry, not on the basis of what you say, on the basis of suitcases. So forget it, don't waste your time. That was the kind of situation which was happening. And that's why that minister got thrown out, by the way.
Got it.
Because Mr. Gandhi heard that this suitcase business.
Got it.
So suddenly Suzuki came on the scene. You've read that in the book, how the Japanese director read in India Today an article saying that the Daihatsu car is the front runner. And Suzuki said, why are we not in the picture? And then they realized that what had happened. There's so many mix-ups. When we had gone to Japan in November 82 to meet these guys, 81, sorry, the letter which we had sent, instead of going to the overseas marketing, had gone to the overseas engineering. So we met the overseas engineering guys. And those guys were not interested at all.
You mustn't have even known that you're meeting the wrong people till
later. We didn't know overseas marketing, overseas engineering. We had no such concept that there were such divisions in the company. And so with all the search, finally, we got Suzuki.
Amazing. So it was literally like a comedy of errors with some pushing from you guys, and it happened.
In a way, it looks as if it was destined. That all these tamashas happened, but none of it was meant to be.
A mother's dream for her son.
And that mother's dream had to come true.
A very powerful mother. One of the most powerful mothers in the world at the time's dream. Always helps. And, you talk about Suzuki. So I just want to talk a little bit. I want to take us through that period in India when you were... doing all this, which is Osamu Suzuki was the chairman of Suzuki, and he's like a legendary car
President.
President of
Correct
Suzuki. Yeah, they call it
designation
president.
is
Yes. What was your first meeting with him? You and V. Krishnamurti met him together.
First meeting we had in February 82.
Right.
We had gone to Japan. So he said, I can meet you in Tokyo, although the headquarters is Hamamatsu. Because he said, I have to go to Japan this afternoon. So our first meeting was a very short meeting, starting after breakfast until lunch. But at the end of that meeting, Osamu Suzuki told both of us that don't go back to India. I'll be coming back in 3 days. I want to see you guys again in Hamamatsu.
And why was that, do you think?
I think by that time he had made up his mind that this was not a no-no situation, that there was something which we could do. So he wanted us to wait around for him.
And then what happened after that?
And then we had this meeting in Hamamatsu, and Suzuki gave us a formal offer, which was the most competitive of offers from Mitsubishi and from Daihatsu and Nissan. This was the most competitive offer.
And what was it?
Competitive in terms of
Investment and
the investment, in terms of the CKD prices.
the knockdown.
We had to import. Import would take place for a long time.
How many years would you import for?
We were required to localize 95% in 5 years. 93%.
That was part of the license that you had.
That was part of government rules.
Which was quite a high target.
It was very high. At that time, there was not one component of the Suzuki car.
In India. How was the negotiation with Suzuki? Was there a lot of negotiation back and forth?
Oh, we had long discussions.
Right.
Myself and this D.S. Gupta, we were the two negotiators from the Indian side. Suzuki had their team of people, and every few days, 3-4 days, we would all go to Tokyo to their lawyer there and discuss all the points with him, because he had to clear the agreement.
So how much did you have to start this business? Like where did the money come, the finance come?
Some of the initial money which was meant for this project, some little amount was released to us, that's all.
Suzuki had to put a percentage also for equity?
Not at that stage.
Right.
After the agreement was reached,
Yes.
then the project report was prepared.
Got it.
On the basis of the project report, which Suzuki was party to, the government sanctioned the project. Suzuki had insisted that they were not going to invest more than, I think it's $40 million.
And for what percentage?
That is again another interest. They said we'll take 25%.
Got it.
Government wanted 40%. And the government proposal was 60-40. They said 25%. We can't at this stage. So that had become a deadlock. Then I advised Suzuki that firstly, instead of 25, raise it to 26, because you will get
voting rights and all.
Voting rights and all that. So they were very happy that I advised them that.
You earned their trust.
So that earned a lot of trust from them, that this guy is a fair guy. And then we worked out a formula that Suzuki will take 40%, but they'll have an option to increase from 26 to 40 over a period of 5 years.
Got it.
So that formula then worked with the government.
I understood, I read some uncle that when Suzuki was signing, the Japanese embassy said that India was a graveyard for foreign investment. So what made them, do you think, take this risk? Other than, of course, meeting you.
Just that, I think partly Suzuki, I'm sure he had a vision of seeing India at some stage changing and becoming a huge market. He wanted Suzuki, which was a small company, to grow. because he was an ambitious man. And how to fulfill his ambition? He couldn't grow in Japan. He couldn't grow outside. India was one of the options. Earlier, he had tried Pakistan. 1 year earlier to us, he had gone to Pakistan and made a similar joint venture with the government.
1 year earlier. So
1 year earlier
so
to
Suzuki had gone, I don't think anyone knows this. Suzuki had gone to Pakistan before India.
Yeah.
And what happened then?
That project was not doing well. And there were problems. The work would get interrupted in the day many times because the workers all wanted to do Nawaz. So he was very worried, of course, about the Indian things. But that's where I think he thought that Krishnamurti and I would be different.
And can you tell us a little bit more about Suzuki Pakistan? Because I'm sure he must have told you why didn't it work out in Pakistan, or what was the difference between India and Pakistan?
Same reason is that leadership, the discipline, and the commitment to the project.
Got it. You know, I just want to, at that time, before you launched Suzuki, I want to take people to what was the Indian automotive scene for a customer. We know that you had Ambassador and Fiat, but I want to get more into, like, you know, what was the status of the Indian automobile industry in terms of, you know, manufacturing, design, marketing, everything. Like, you know how you said you did this new thing called a customer survey, which PSUs would never do. And probably even car companies at the time had probably not done surveys.
It's not necessary because they were not allowed to import technology. Also, within the license conditions, you couldn't grow.
You couldn't grow.
You couldn't change the specifications of the car without getting the license amended, all of which, you know, were difficult things to do. What was the incentive? So while we all criticize Hindustan Motors and premiers that they didn't invest in R&D, they didn't develop new technology, they kept selling the old cars. What was really the motivation for any company to invest money in R&D? You couldn't grow.
You couldn't grow, why?
Because the license restricted you.
To the number of cars you would produce.
The license in those days specified the maximum number of production.
No way.
Yes, of course. It was a criminal offense to produce more than what the license provided. You could go to jail for that.
But then what if the demand was growing?
Who cared about demand?
Who cared about demand?
Who cared about the customer? It was the planning commission which mattered.
Wow. So therefore that obviously percolated down into everything. So all the decisions. So even
why should they invest in R&D? Why should they invest in improvement? They only maximize their profit from the limited volumes they could produce.
Right. So on one level, it was an industry that was really ripe for disruption.
Yeah. They didn't want cars to be produced, period.
I see.
It was a sin product.
Sin product, right? Like tobacco, alcohol, cars.
Alcohol, cars.
So how do the public was supposed to travel from one place to the other?
Scooters, bicycles, walk,
bullock carts.
Scooter
also, Bajaj had the same problem, I'm sure.
Bajaj had licenses, but of course, Bajaj had a waiting list also 10, 12 years.
Yes. And did cars also have waiting lists for years?
All the cars. Premier had a long waiting list.
Right.
When you were asking about cars, the reason after I came back from the United States, or I could get a Premier, was because I had become senior enough to get a government allotment. Otherwise, to get a Premier car was years of waiting.
Right. Premier Padmini, right. You've described Osamu Suzuki as a feisty person who was very detail-oriented. Right.
He was always looking to see how he could reduce cost.
Right.
For example, you walk into a factory floor. You'll see all the lights are way up on the roof. He said, why are they on the roof? Why don't you lower the lights? So where the machines are, you want more light. If you bring it lower, you can do with lesser wattage bulbs.
Right.
Movement of products. He said, why are stores kept at one place and all the material is moved from store? You have stores and entries at a number of points in the factory. So you could do that. He started a campaign, reduce weight of every component, every equipment by 1 gram. 1 gram. And like that, there were, numerous ways in which he was always looking how to save money.
Amazing. And can you tell us about the stapler story?
Same thing, if you are 4 people sitting on a table, why do you need 4 staplers? One is enough.
Right. Amazing. And did you learn from this? Because this is actually very Gandhian in a way.
I kept learning from him on this whole question of frugality. As it is, with my background, I had always to look how to do with the least. And that shaped my life in my earlier life. I just had to minimize my expenditures. I didn't smoke, I didn't drink because I couldn't afford to.
It served you well.
You go into offices in India, huge big offices. Why? You have big corridors, broad corridors. Why? You have big entry places, like space. He hated to waste space. He said, space is cost. Reduce your building sizes.
Right. Interesting. Talking about the joint venture, so there's so many areas when you got into this partnership with Suzuki that that you have to work together on. And of course, the obvious areas are there's finance, there's technology, but a large part of technology is the people. So I want to understand what was the Indian, capital, the people training level at the time, and how important was it to get the Japanese there to train them, and how did that happen over time to change mindsets, attitudes?
See, the concept of Japanese management is very simple, really. Suzuki, and all Japan for that matter, believes in the concept that if all the employees of a company have a common objective and all are interested in achieving that common objective and work positively for that, you will get the best results. It's obvious.
Sounds obvious.
If you put it that way,
yes.
If 100% employees are pulling in one direction, you will get a better result if 30 are pulling in one direction, 50 in another direction, and 20 in another direction. Then they'll cancel each other out. In India, it was never like that. And the main task, he told us, was that you have to get your workers to understand that the best future for them will be if they and the management work in cooperation, in partnership with each other. How to do it is your business. But remember, if the worker has to work with you and believe in you, you have to do what will earn their confidence.
Okay, small pause. This is the part where I'm supposed to ask you to subscribe. But honestly, only do it if you want more conversations that actually make you think. That's the whole point of the secret sauce. All right, back to it. I'd like to talk about the launch of Maruti 800. When the 800 came out, what was your mindset? What was going on at that time in the company in India with you?
Before we started even manufacturing the car, we had imported 10 of the Suzuki 800cc cars 10 of what is the Omni,
The Omni, yes.
and
The
10
van.
of a van, and 10 of the pickup trucks. 30 cars were imported. We made 10 groups of 3 cars each. And different teams took these 3 cars in different directions and visited different cities.
Yes.
They were exhibited in these cities for a couple of days in each place. So that way we covered, I don't remember how many, but a whole lot of cities were covered in that exhibition. I went personally, I was then the director of marketing, because this was way back in 82. I went to a number of these cities, had press conferences with these cars, and to tell people what these cars are about.
This is before you started making them also.
They had not started production at all.
Got it.
But we had signed the agreement.
So this is kind of part of the
Pre-production.
awareness campaign and research campaign.
There were the usual questions, it's so small, potholes in India are so big, and all those things. But overall, Mukul, I was convinced that the demand for the car itself would be huge. There's so much interest of people. I had personally got a car which I was driving around Delhi in those days, right from 82. And every time I stopped at a traffic light, lots of people would come and say, "Ye kya cheez hai?" So the conclusion I had was that we were supposed to make 20,000 cars in the first year, 40 in the second year, like that. 20,000 vehicles, sorry. Out of that, cars would only a part of it. I said, the demand is so much higher, what's going to happen?
Right.
We will run into the same kind of situation as Fiat.
But the plan was to make 20,000 cars first year, and second year?
40, 60, 80, 100.
And at that time, how big was the car industry in India?
35, 38,000, less than 40.
Less than 40. So your original plan was to make 50% more of the existing car industry.
The first year itself.
And second year, basically doubling the car industry. But you saw that even that was way too little.
Way too little.
So that was the demand supply gap.
I was convinced that we will have a huge problem of black marketing.
Got it.
We didn't want to get into that situation.
Yes.
So we started this system. We said we'll do pre-booking. And then we said we will do a computer draw randomly to determine the order in which the customers would get the cars.
Wow.
And nobody had confidence that this could possibly be done fair. Such was our credibility. You know, we were the first company, I think, in India to start computerization.
Wow.
From the beginning.
Wow.
Day one, we started computerization, and this was way back in 83.
Right.
No IT companies at that time. We got the computer program. So I said, let me see how it works. They said that you press the button, the list will come. You press it again, after 2 seconds, you'll have a totally different list.
Right.
It's time sensitive.
That shows that it's...
So then I got a lot of these press guys. I said, oh, dekho kaise chalta hai. And we did it. So they were partly convinced. Then we got the Vice President of India to do the first actual draw of the cars. The guy who came up number one was an Indian Airlines employee.
Got it.
And there were no VIPs anywhere in the list.
Right, right.
So that's when they got convinced that this was actually a fair deal.
Right.
So we got not only the benefit of credibility, avoided all, at least allegations. There was still black marketing in the car.
Of course, because there's so much demand.
Customers bought it and sold it to somebody
Yes.
else. But then it was a customer getting the money. The management was not accused of making money. But most important was the 10,000 rupee deposit gave us a huge amount of money in Maruti. I had no further cash problems ever in the history of the company.
Wow.
As a result of this cash, Maruti was profitable from its first year of operations. Mr. Suzuki initially did not believe the scheme was ever going to be a success.
He didn't realize the demand.
He said,
related
no,
demand.
nobody pays for a car which is not even manufactured yet.
Right.
Nobody books in advance. What are you talking about? So we had to tell him, sir, just leave us with this.
How many bookings did you get in advance?
Sorry?
How many bookings did you get?
The first time we did it, we got about 120,000 bookings for the car.
120,000 bookings of 10,000 rupees each?
Yeah.
In 1982?
And then the van was another 20-odd thousand. The pickup truck was a flop, 2,000-3,000. We had
Yes.
to give it up. We never made it.
Yes.
But 120,000 bookings at 10,000 rupees.
How did the average person, because 10,000 rupees in those days is like 10 lakhs today or more. How did the average person, like an Air India employee or anyone?
They didn't think the money would go away because it was a government company.
No.
The government companies had that kind of credibility that it's not going to go away. It's their money. It was in the bank. It made us financially independent.
Yes.
It made us financially independent of the government.
Got it.
I didn't have to go to government each year to get a budget approved. I said, I have my own money, don't worry.
Amazing.
So that was a big, big factor in our success, that independence financially from the finance.
Amazing. And after that, how soon after that did you launch the car?
The first car was released on the 14th of December, which was Sanjay's birthday,
Oh, on Sanjay's birthday. Wow.
1983.
So the emotion remains there. And Mrs. Gandhi was there
And she came to release the first car.
and you gave her a key.
And she gave the key to Mr. Harpal Singh,
Right.
who was the Indian Airlines employee.
Got it. And can you describe that moment? What was it? Was there any...
As far as I was concerned, when the function was over, I don't know, you don't know it yet, the kind of relief you get when your daughter gets married and the barat is left and everything is okay.
Right.
This was several times that.
Wow.
It's such a relief, you've done it.
Right. So the Maruti 800 was, a fundamentally Japanese car that you brought to India. But what tweaks did you do, in price, the design, other things for India?
Japanese are very careful about testing the cars in the environment which they're going to be used. So other than these 30 cars, they also imported some more cars with Japanese engineers and people. And they drove all the way around India, looking and using the car under different terrains. A number of changes were made as a result. For example, the car was raised because the cars in Japan too low for Indian roads. The horn had to be changed because the kind of horn they had in Japan was not working yet. The treatment of the car in terms of paint and all had to be changed in some extent because of the weather conditions in India in different parts. So like that, and these changes kept going on as we kept getting more and more experience of what happens in India. The back seats. In many of the cars, the back seats in Japan are designed for children. They're not very comfortable seats. In India, the backs, in Japan, the driver and the owner sits in the front seat. Here it's the other way around.
Yes.
Even in Maruti 800 are a lot of drivers.
Yes.
And the owner sat in the back seat, so they said to seat here. So we had to change the seats at the back.
Got it.
That kind of changes had to be done.
Got it. And
but funny thing has to happen, I must say. There were lots of accidents in the beginning with the Maruti 800 because the acceleration of the car was far better than of the Ambassador or the Fiat. And when you applied the brakes, it stopped in a much smaller distance than those cars. So both front end and back end collisions would take place
Right.
because the driver wouldn't judge
Yes.
what would happen when he accelerated or applied the brake.
And what did you do for that? Because when you got the first reports
We
of
had
that,
to educate the customer. There's no other way.
right?
Right? A lot of education of customers is required on how to use the car.
On the dealer level.
So we had a lot of competitions and in various ways bring home to customers.
Got it.
For this smallness of the car, we had competitions for pack a Maruti. And the competition was how many people could you put into a car. And somebody, one thing with 20 odd people packed into a Maruti 800.
Wow.
Unimaginable.
And these were national competitions.
National competitions.
With newspaper ads and everything.
Yeah.
What fun.
It was great fun those days.
So you really also revolutionized automotive marketing also in a way, along with the car itself.
We were also careful, Mukul, to see that the demand for the car continued to increase. We didn't want to suppress it by increasing the price.
Right.
So even though a 52,000 rupee car had a 50,000 premium, we didn't increase the price. We said, let the customer take the benefit. It'll only increase the demand for the car. But of course, we couldn't expand capacity till the liberalization took place.
So you were stuck at what level?
Project was 100,000. And we had no money from anywhere beyond 100,000. Even if we had rupees, we couldn't get foreign exchange. What we did do was, our engineers did, was the Indian Jugaad. And by these Jugaad methods, we could increase the production from 100,000 to about 140,000. So we were running at 40,000 cars, 40% above capacity.
Wow.
But that's the best we could do, but there's still long waiting lists.
And after liberalization, what did it switch to?
Then they said, you arrange a foreign exchange loan to cover the import cost of equipment. Then we'll allow you.
Got it.
Then in 2002 or 2003, we got a loan from XCM Bank, Japan. And that's when we could get a second line in. Afterwards, of course, it was much easier.
And now how many cars does Maruti make?
Now we are 2.5 million roughly we have capacity.
A year.
Yeah.
Right.
And we are hoping to get by 2030, 31 to around 4 million. The size of the plant which we are putting out, 1,000, is the largest in the world.
Really?
There's no place, one site which manufactures more than 1 million cars anywhere.
And this is the one.
The Kharkhoda will be 1 million.
Right.
Gujarat is now already reaching 1 million or has just about reached 1 million.
Wow. You know, there's the generation of people in India who believe, for them getting that car, their first car was the Maruti. For 90% of Indians, the first car was the Maruti. And that was like getting a house. It was like, I got a car. They made it in their life. So can you tell us about when you encountered people like that who came to you and said, sir, because of you, I got this amazing car?
I think the biggest changes were in the lives of women.
Right.
I have had several women telling me that having this Maruti 800 gave them such a great sense of independence. Girls started working because going to work in a bus was not a feasible thing. Many women who used to go out with drivers now could dispense with the driver because they were sure the car would not break down. I know several friends of mine, some big industry.
So women were comfortable to drive by themselves.
They were comfortable driving. We saw all these weekend resorts coming up around Delhi and other places. Again, part of this process of having a car which you just pick up and go. When we used to go out before with Ambassador of the Fiat, 2 days before we went out, we had to go through the process of checking and getting spare fan belt and spare hose pipes. And
you mean if you go to a
checklist.
if you go to a hill station or something.
On the way, you have to stop to cool the car.
Yes.
So like that, there were so many people used to write to me that I've taken the car up to some pass somewhere in the Himalayas. I had a great time, and this picture of them. So
Right.
lots of letters like that used to come. People used to send me that we've done a tour from North India to South India and we've never had a problem. There were so many of this kind of testimonials which kept coming in of people saying they'd done things which they never thought a Maruti 800 could do.
Not only a car, I think. They didn't think a car could do this without breaking down. So I think that's such an interesting thing that you're saying, which is that I think everybody goes in a car today and you take a car for granted. Today, a car breaking down is seen as a very random, irritating thing that happens. But I remember also when I was young, when we used to go to Khandala in the Ambassador, like you're saying, you had to stop and it had to cool down.
Yeah.
And on your way up, there was always a debate. Would my car stop or would my car not stop? There was always tension in the car. Gaadi band ho jayegi ya nahi band ho jayegi. It was always, if you made it to the top without any problem, great, but good chance that something would happen. And of course, on your way up, there would be 50 cars that you would see out there with the bonnets open, the guy waiting out there for the car to cool down, or like you said, fan built, whatever, all this stuff. So,
you remember the monsoon period?
Monsoon was finished. The wipers didn't work.
No, how many cars would stop on the road?
Yes.
Because water would enter the distributor.
Right.
When I went to Calcutta for this car show, first time, the journalist there said, sir, ये monsoon में चलेगी नहीं because हमारे गड्ढों के पानी में गाड़ी बंद हो जाएगी, सब गाड़ी बंद हो जाती हैं. I said, okay, let's see. When I went there a year later, we had a press conference, and these same guys told me that the only car which would go to the airport during the monsoons was a Maruti 800.
Amazing.
It would never, the water had no effect on it because the distributor was totally sealed.
Got it.
It was waterproof.
So basically you were responsible for modernizing the way Indians travel.
The way Indians think about cars. When I was a car user, I expected very little of the car.
Yes.
And going to servicing, you have to sit around there out in the open. I still remember getting a Fiat service, sitting out in the open, getting the car serviced. When I became marketing director, I said, look, I have a chance to change some of these practices.
Right.
And that's why some of the more modern practices you see came about because of that.
That's
my own experience with Fiats and Hindustans.
That's called true disruption. You disrupted the way Indians think about driving. Therefore, you disrupted, like you said, suddenly you could have hotels and hill stations, places everywhere because there were people could travel again without being able to travel before. All over India, suddenly it got more dispersed. Urban India mobility increased. Women could drive more. People could go further distances. So the country developed more. When people can go further and further, the country develops more. The roads get better. People build more roads then because there are more cars. That is a truly disruptive technology. So would you say that Maruti also, because of the supply chain that you created, this massive back-end industry, really built what is the modern car industry today in India?
I think it was the fact that there was this kind of a component industry in India which attracted all the global car manufacturers to India when liberalization took place,
right,
and cars were delicensed. You look around and you'll find very few, if any, other industry where all global manufacturers have come to India. And this is largely because the biggest concern of foreign manufacturers is supply chain in India. We have never seriously worked to strengthen and improve the quality of our supply chains. And supply chain is the heart of manufacturing. If you want to develop your industrial base, you have to develop your supply chain.
Got it. So, as the chairman or managing director of Maruti, you also innovated a lot and disrupted a lot of managerial practices. You forced managers to use the same toilets as workers and eat the same canteen food as the sweeper. Even today that's a crazy thing to do. Can you tell us more about that decision and how that happened?
As I said, the primary object was how to build a team. Now, if you are going to tell workers that you are my partners and you're as important as anybody else in the company, which is true actually.
Of course.
Any component is as important in the product as any other component.
Yes.
One bad small component will bring the machine to a stop. Then you have to treat people to believe that. If you distinguish between people on grounds of hierarchy, in terms of what they eat or where they go to the bathroom or what clothes they wear, how do you bring about this sense of equality and partnership? If you have a team in football or cricket, don't they all have exactly the same conditions? Clothes, dressing room, staying, everything. Same principle. So that applied in Maruti also. We started having open offices, save space. So instead of everybody having their own room and all 3, 4, 5 air conditioners and all that, I said, why? Sit in a one big hall. We'll be disturbed. I said, okay, we'll make small meeting rooms where if you have to do some secret work, go and talk to the guy secretly there. But otherwise, why should you not be doing your work in the open? Why should your work be confidential or secret from others? And Mukul, I told the officers, you guys need less calories because you're doing less work, otherwise you will become fat.
Yeah.
So it's better you eat the same food, less oily, less fried stuff, and eat it as the workers.
And what did the officers say when you told them that?
Right in the beginning, some of the senior guys who came to us, general manager type of guys or from other companies, they wouldn't do this. And they started bringing their own lunch and they started a lunch box. Mr. Krishnamurti said, lock the room, take away the air conditioner.
Which room?
That lunch room they had made for themselves.
Right. And what about sharing the bathrooms?
That was from the beginning, that there will be common bathrooms.
I see. Because on a manufacturing floor, that's amazing.
The only way to have clean bathrooms is to have a common bathroom.
Yes.
There's no other way you can do it.
There is not the way, you're right.
You see that in any office.
Yes. In the airports also.
Airports, everywhere.
Yes.
You have to have common bathrooms.
Yes. It's true. You came from the IAS, which is a very hierarchical institution. And in Maruti, you started dismantling the hierarchy. Where did this impetus come from?
It's part of the system of reducing cost. If you look at it logically, why should a paper go through 4 levels before a decision is taken?
Right.
You have, in public sector, you have these levels where the executive joins, let's say at L1 or P1 or whatever it's called. Then P2, P3, and the manager is some P5, and then general manager is P8. And there are people at each level in papers. Why? It's waste of time, waste of money, delays, all of it costs.
Yes.
You're trying to bring down cost. So we said we'll have a flat hierarchy.
Right.
We'll have a department manager, and below that, everybody is equal. Yeah. You can be in different pay scales, depending on your seniority. Well, it doesn't mean that your seniority means that you have to get people with less years of service reporting papers through you.
Right.
You report directly to the department manager or the general manager.
Got it.
Flat hierarchies is accepted everywhere in the world as the right kind of thing to do. This hierarchical system in offices is terribly wasteful.
Let's just pause. Subscribing here isn't just about supporting our channel. It's about choosing what kind of thinking you want around you regularly. So if that resonates, you know what to do. You know what's very interesting, that you were running a car company without being a car expert, and before you did this, you didn't know anything about cars more than the average person, except that they break down a little bit and all those things. So you had all these technical people working under you who obviously knew much more than you. Did you ever have imposter syndrome? Like how did you manage to lead all these different people without having that domain expertise?
No, I'm wondering why more people didn't ask me this question in the past. That here you were a total generalist, put in charge of running a car company. Nowhere in the world, I think, will you find a generalist who becomes the managing director of a car company.
Right.
I think the answer was that firstly, I was quite willing to ask all the technical people, okay, look, I don't know this, tell me, explain why you do this. Now you'll find if you ask a technical why you do this, he has to become very clear in his thinking as to why is he doing it. And then you ask him, what about the cost, what about the alternative? So they start thinking different. And when they saw that my questions would ultimately lead to some improvement, they started, in a sense, respecting me because they see this guy can understand what we tell him. And then he asks me questions which make me think more.
But how do you, just to understand your mindset, because many of us are in situations where we are, a little bit out of our depth. How did you navigate being out of your
like
depth?
Any job. When I became Agriculture Production Commissioner, I didn't know a thing about agriculture, animal husbandry, sheep breeding, forestry, fisheries. I was still the secretary of the department. I had to deal with all the technical people. So I had to learn these things. One of the, I would say, the key to doing any job is your willingness and your ability to learn. And to learn, you must be able to tell people, I don't know, explain to me. If you start behaving as if you know from the beginning, you never learn. You have to shed your ego, shed your whatever, and tell people that, look, I want to understand this, please tell me. I found this in all walks of life, whether it was in the electricity ministry, whether it was in all those agriculture production, wherever I worked, this willingness to tell people and ask them to tell you, you have to be able to learn quickly. You have to be able to understand. You have to be able to analyze.
Japan's manufacturing capability is built on, collective responsibility. Like you said, the worker, engineer, manager all feel every cog is part of the machine equally, which is a very radical concept in a country like India, where we love hierarchies. How did you actually change that in Maruti? How do you change people's minds?
It's all discussing with them the question of cost.
So it all came down to cost. You brought it down to a very efficiency-based thing.
Cost. Every company we had earlier, I'd seen, public sector, all have a quality inspection department. What does a quality inspection department do? Locate the mistakes made by the worker. And then somebody has to correct it. Some mistakes are missed because a human inspection can never be 100%. They go to the customer also. If the worker was to make it right the first time, you avoid this whole quality inspection.
You prevent the mistake.
You prevent the mistake.
By empowering.
How much money do you save? If the vendor correctly makes his products, packs them correctly, the right number, the right quality, you don't have to have any inspection at your end. We used to have a large department of vendor inspection, a big store of storing spare parts, big inventories for days on end. Over time, we did away with all of that. We don't have a store except for imported parts. Local parts, we barely carry 3 hours of inventory because everybody needs to do his job. Then you bring cost down. You can't be competitive if you pack extra cost at different levels in different ways.
And everybody does their job because you empower them.
So you are entitled, if you find a defective part on the line, stop the line, say this part is defective, I want to it up. But you have also to motivate them because they were concerned with maximizing the number of saleable cars made. They had a bonus relating to the number of saleable cars made.
Right.
So the less mistakes you made, the less rework there was done.
So I'm just trying to understand what would be like an analogy there or lesson for people. Today you have so many people, entrepreneurs in India, employing people on all different levels. From this, which is one is of course treat everyone equally, and how do you motivate everyone, every cog in the machine to pick up the slack?
Fundamental motivation partly is the soft motivation I talked about treating them and respecting them as human beings. You can't treat some employees as if they are socially, educationally inferior to you. That's not right. They are human beings. Treat them as such. The second is that if as a result of their efforts, you're making more money, use some of this money to improve their lives also. They should see in a transparent way that some of that benefit is actually coming to them.
Got it.
See, if you're running, say, at 100, everybody is happy, the management is making profits out of 100. If I can increase by doing a different management system from 100 to 200, and if I share 20 out of that to the workers, I still have 80 more.
Everybody wins.
Who's losing out of this? But workers coming late, not working 7.5 hours in a shift, taking longer lunch breaks, taking absenteeism. Now, all of this costs.
Yeah.
Having a leave reserve is a cost.
Yeah.
If you don't have absenteeism, you don't have leave reserves, so you reduce cost.
Right. I worked in a company in Germany many years ago, which had a factory floor also. It was compact disc manufacturing. So I spent some time on manufacturing floors in Germany for a year, basically. And I saw that in India, a lot of the Indian middle class in general aspires to like an IT job or something, like a white collar job, not a blue collar job so much. But in Germany and in Japan, which were two great manufacturing countries, that's not the case. You can manufacturing job is a great job to have also. So how much of India's manufacturing gap is actually like a status problem dressed up as a policy issue?
I think our engineers and our supervisors even haven't enough experience on the shop floor at all. One of the innovations we made in Maruti, which was resisted by many, was that we started promoting workers to become supervisors. The objection was workers are unionized, supervisors not supposed to be unionized. If the same worker becomes a supervisor, how will discipline be maintained? These were the usual None of it remained valid. The person who became a supervisor was extremely effective in training the workers, teaching them what to do because he knew what the work was. The workers respected him. And it's wrong to think that if he was a worker, he will always remain irresponsible. I think what we need to change is a mindset about workers. If you start talking to workers, educating them, treating them like they are part of your total family of production people, equally as human beings, there's huge difference. They are basically similar human beings. In fact, much of the improvements which happen in a factory come from the people who are actually doing the job because they know where improvements are possible.
Right. And does that still happen in India a lot, this
All
issue?
the time. Last year, I think we made more than 1 million improvements, more than 1 million suggestions which were implemented. We saved over 400 odd crores. You have to make the worker feel that if he makes the company do better, he will also do better. That's basic to this whole concept of manufacturing.
Got it. Uncle, now I want to move a little bit more, in your amazing life of how many years, if I may ask?
I'm now 91 plus.
91 plus. Amazing. In this amazing life that you have, I want to talk a little bit more about, the adversities that you face, because it's through our adversities that we learn so much as well. Even though you have had a spotless career and with 100% integrity, but you were actually prosecuted by the government that you were part of for doing your job. And you had CBI had put multiple cases on you for decades, basically.
They lasted in court for about 20 years.
20 years. You had 20 years of CBI cases. Can we discuss why that happened? Okay.
There's always financial benefit in some form.
Got it.
Mostly what politicians ask for you. The bottom line of all that is a financial benefit. Government's decisions
Yes.
are not always shaped by logic or rationality. The political aspect of government is very important to people in the government. What happened to me was largely because some politicians thought that they had a right to get some benefits from Maruti vendors and others. I had always taken the view that I will not allow anything to be done which will in any way harm the interests of Maruti, either in the short term or the long term.
Right.
And that brought me in conflict on various issues with some of these politicians. And that's where the CBI cases started. These cases were ultimately the result of political factors. They were not based on fact. They were not based actually on any law which could be upheld. And that is what the courts did ultimately. They threw the cases out without framing charges, because they said even a prima facie case, assuming what the CBI has said in their charge sheet is valid, if we accept all of that, even then no crime is made out.
Right.
That time, Mukul, Maruti was the most outstanding public sector company. It is one of the few companies which was actually making substantial profits, giving dividends.
Yes.
And that same company, we were accused that you are favoring Suzuki.
Right. Oh.
That's one of the things which, for purposes of somebody wanting to get himself promoted after I retired.
Right.
He was trying to show that Suzuki was not a good partner, should get somebody else as a partner and all that.
Got it.
The company which built Maruti, which brought it to the stage of making it the dominant company in India,
Yes.
had this kind of allegation. Mr. Suzuki was tremendously hurt.
Yes.
He said, I have worked with so much trust and so much commitment to India.
And this is all political.
It's all political.
Right. And
And you see how it happened once the settlement was made. Fortunately, the government changed. And Mr. Sikandar Bakht, he was the industry minister, he realized that there's no way a car company could be run by a government. There's no way a car company could just be handed over to somebody else to run. The whole technology, manufacturing, everything is different. So he went back and gave Suzuki control, and you see what's happened to the company.
So in this case, there was never an allegation of personal gain or theft. It was all this.
That is the beauty of the whole thing, that in all these CBI cases, there's no personal gain or any kind of personal motivation.
So what did you feel, Uncle, when these cases happen? Because CBI cases are a very scary thing for most people.
I knew enough about government to recognize what it was.
Yes.
Fortunately, I had the full support of Suzuki. I also had the knowledge in my own mind, for my own satisfaction, that I have done nothing which was wrong. In fact, all that I have done has been in the interests of the company which I'm serving. I also believe that in this country, by and large, the truth ultimately prevails. I have confidence. And I had the support of my family. Of course, they were all of us were worried. I mean, I'd be lying if I said we were not worried.
Because you had the government against you on one side and you had Suzuki defending you on the other side. A foreign company was defending.
That's right. It never happened in the world anywhere, I think.
So a foreign company was defending.
For a foreign company to defend a national of the company where they're working. Yes. I don't think it's ever happened.
Against the government.
Against the government.
I don't think it's ever happened. And it should never happen again.
Should never happen.
Yes. Like you said, this was 20 years. It dragged on in the court and all that stuff, which is a long time. When pressure like this becomes long term, it's like chronic pressure, litigation, reputation to some level, you must be feeling it, even though you've done nothing wrong. How did you cope with it?
I think all those who were dealing in Maruti, I don't know what they internally thought about the matter. But externally, I had no problems in my work. Within the company, no problems.
Which is outside?
With the dealers, with the vendors, nothing.
Got it.
Because ultimately, all these people, whether it's a vendor or dealer, they also say who's in power. Right. What would have happened if I had been ousted is a different matter. I don't know who would have been what.
Got it. You're still the boss.
But as long as you're the boss, you don't have a problem.
Got it.
Especially with Suzuki's support.
Right. And Uncle, I don't know if you've said this publicly ever, but you also were diagnosed with prostate cancer at a similar time as all this was happening.
Actually, I retired in 97. My prostate cancer was diagnosed in 97. It's possible, I'm not saying it happened, but it's possible that the stress of these years of going through CBI cases, going to Tis Hazari and all that kind of stuff.
You are called many times, is it?
I had to go there every hearing.
Every hearing.
I had to get permission every time I wanted to travel abroad.
Really?
I had to report back to CBI once I returned.
Got it.
It was not easy. All these restrictions were all there. So I think maybe the stress of all this may have accelerated or caused prostate cancer. I don't know.
Right.
God was kind. The prostate cancer was also 100% cured.
Right.
And it's now 28 years.
That's good.
28 years is a long time here for a cancer survivor.
Amazing.
So, as I'm saying, God also sees what happens.
We hope so. Sometimes you see so much going on in the world that you wonder where.
True.
But yes, we have to have faith. All of us have to have our faith.
You have to have that faith.
Yes. Can you tell us, like, on your darkest days, how did you, manage to go to work and not say, I'm going to quit this whole thing? Because if I quit, the case will go.
I had to do my work.
Right.
That, in any case, I had to do. So I had to do my work and attend to the court cases when I had to brief the lawyers. In India, I find that a lot of the work has to be done by you. The lawyers don't do all that much work. I couldn't afford a very high-priced lawyer. I had a comparatively much more reasonable lawyer.
So did you ever feel like giving up and saying, chalo, anyway, I should have been retired by now?
No, not at all. Why?
No, I mean, some people, when there's a lot of stress.
Why would I give up on these things, on something which is blatantly wrong?
Because for some people, when something is blatantly wrong, but when the power that they are fighting against is something as big as a government of a country, they would feel that, it's pointless to fight against such a large adversary.
You're fighting the case in court now. You're not fighting the government.
Yes.
You have to prove in the court. And if you just walk away, you're admitting your guilt.
Right. And, you mentioned that as a child, you were deeply shy. Now, how does someone like that, or the shy child, reach a level where, they build such a massive company where you have to travel all over the world, talk to so many people, talk to all the workers and all, and then have the strength to say, I'm going to, withstand a 20-year-old case, a 20-year-long case?
See, the shyness you have to overcome. It was the principal of the IAS training school who actually counseled me and said that this shyness of yours you have to get over.
And how did you show the shyness?
Part of the way of getting over shyness, I thought, was that I must have better knowledge of what I'm talking about, what I'm doing, than people otherwise have. Because then I can talk about things with authority and not feel that somebody's going to laugh at me. The shyness comes partly from the feeling that you're going to say something and somebody will laugh at you because you said the wrong thing. So to get more accurate and more complete in your knowledge became part of the job which I had to do. And that's why this whole process of learning and saying I don't know and to learn more than others. I think one of the things I can pride myself on is that I did learn most things quite adequately, better than almost anybody else. I got, for example, the chairman of the CA, Tata Rao. He was a legendary figure at that time. When I retired, left BHGL, left the Ministry of Energy. He wrote a very nice letter saying that we are so sorry to lose you. And he said that you know more about the power sector than my engineers do.
Right.
So I spent time actually trying to learn and understand.
And how do you learn?
I think that helped me because as far as these cases were concerned, I spent time to understand the law.
Right.
I did spend a lot of time on the law and asked the lawyers questions. And I built up what the right defense was. And I was confident that I had done nothing wrong. So if I have not done anything wrong, except for the fear of some arbitrary action by the CBI, why would I worry?
And you talked about learning. You learned, like you said, when you had the cases going on, you learned as much as the lawyer did. When you were in in agriculture, you learned about agriculture and fisheries as much as those people did. When you were in the power sector, you learned as much as the engineers did. And I'm pretty sure in Maruti, you must have learned as much as the car engineers did. How do you do that? How do you learn so much? What do you do? Do you read a lot? What does learning mean?
Talk to people. You learn most by talking to people and asking them to explain that. Because lots of people, technical people even, are not very clear on why something is what they say.
Yes. When you go into the detail, it
You have
opens
to ask
up.
them to explain in simple words, no jargon in it. Then they'll come to you, and then you'll see that you'll also understand it very easily. Sorry, this sounds like a little bit of self-praise. When I went to Williams College, government sent me in 1963 to do an MA in development economics. I had never studied economics in my life. I was chemistry, physics, mathematics.
Right.
So the first lecture which we had in the Williams College, I couldn't understand half the words which were used. So after that, I went to the professor and I said, look, I'm not an economics student. I don't know what you're talking about. So he looked up, he said, there's a book called The Principles of Economics by Williamson. Read that. So that's when I started that's where some reading was done, reading of economics. At the end of the first semester, I topped the college. The rest of all the guys were PhDs and bankers and people working with finance ministry, all well educated in economics.
You topped the college.
I topped the college. I got an A+. A professor there asked me to write an article with him, which was published and is still used in teaching in Harvard. So if you apply your mind, you must learn. You must want to learn.
You seem like such a happy, resolved person. What would you say has helped you in your amazing, long and productive life that has kept you going?
There are some principles, if I may say, which I have used in my life, which I've learned and which I follow. The first is to distinguish between what I can change and what I cannot change. And having done that, to learn to accept what I can't change.
What do they say? Give me the courage, the strength to change what I can and the courage to accept what I cannot. Something like that.
So I must accept what I can't change.
Right.
And that should not cause me any stress or any worry. If I can't change it, what is the use worrying? Because worry never solves a problem. That's one. Second thing, and this was from the earlier Gita teachings, it remained with me. Do your best for what you are required to do. Don't get stressed with the result. Don't worry about the result. Again, the principle is the same. You can't change the result because it's not in your hand.
Cool.
You can do your best to Mukul. Whatever is your best. You can't change the outcome.
How do you develop that? I mean,
you have to accept it.
I've read that before many times. Do your best. We all know. And don't worry about the outcome. But how do you do that?
You have to accept, not stress about it. Accept the result. But fundamentally, these two have been the principles on which I have lived.
Because when the CBI cases happened, it's something deeply unfair. You were exceeding your role. Not one thing you did wrong. You were doing better you were doing an amazing job on every level. But yet you got persecuted and prosecuted in this horrendous way for 20 years. So it's detachment and acceptance is very hard when something really unfair happens to you.
I tried my best. Mr. Suzuki intervened more than once with the government at the level of the Prime Minister. They wouldn't do anything. Right. Despite Mr. Suzuki personally writing and meeting the Prime Minister and saying that we've looked into it, the board has looked into it, there's no wrongdoing of any kind.
Right.
But there was no intervention because it was obviously a political. You had to accept it. Then what could you do? The only thing you could do was to fight it as effectively as possible in court, which we did and we won.
Right. Amazing.
So You have to see you do what you can do. I mean, beyond asking the Prime Minister, you can't do anything else.
Yes.
And after that, the only thing you can do is to defend yourself as robustly in court as you can.
You have mentioned the word frugality many times in your personal life and in work. Can you just take us through what that means in both areas?
Fundamentally, Mukul, if I may put it, I do not like waste in any form.
Right.
Frugality is avoiding waste.
Right.
If something can be done with a lesser use of resources, find that way. Don't waste resources.
What is your philosophy of money?
When I was in my earlier years, we never had money. And it used to seem to me to something which was difficult to attain. How will I ever have it?
Unattainable, yes.
Unattainable thought. At that time, buying any household gadget used to give huge satisfaction because you saved up to it. I started to become financially comfortable after I retired from Maruti. Because Maruti, I never got much money. It was same government salaries. And
Maruti, you didn't get much money. Through building the whole of Maruti.
I think as managing director, by the time I retired, my cost to the company was, a few lakhs, 5-6 lakhs a year, something very small.
5-6 lakhs a year?
Yeah.
And the revenue was what then? Thousands
I had
of
a
crores.
car, I had a driver and all that. But money was not much.
And what was the revenue then? Thousands of crores.
Yeah, of course. We are making profits of thousands.
You're making profits of thousands of crores. And your salary was lakhs.
My salary was in thousands.
In thousands, because of the government company. But the joint venture with Suzuki didn't mean you got some private sector salary?
I wasn't private sector. It was at 50-50. So there were restrictions.
Wow.
I didn't have money in Maruti.
Right.
I built Maruti, or I worked in Maruti. I should build is the wrong word. I worked in Maruti with the salary of a government servant. I mean, what government provided for Class A, PSU, chairman, managing directors. But after retirement, and after I got treated for prostate cancer, I started getting consultancy appointments and I started getting onto boards, and then government relaxed or changed the rules and independent directors could get commission from profits. That's when money started coming in. And I found suddenly I had more money than I needed.
And how old were you when money started coming in?
Oh, let's say 2000.
60 plus.
I was 66.
So it's till 66 you were living on a government salary.
Till then.
Yes. And how did that affect your philosophy of money? I guess you had spent your whole life.
I still can't spend money.
Yes.
Very difficult.
Right.
As I said, I hate waste.
Yes.
So I don't like throwing things away.
Yes. Got it. Uncle, you are 90 plus and you're still working, writing, doing Zoom calls all the time. For many people, they dream of a retirement and, with a nice nest egg and, big house and all these things. What do you think keeps you going?
If I was to dream of retirement, it wouldn't be a pleasant dream because what would I do in retirement? The way I'm made up, I can't sit with nothing to do.
Right.
I find that impossible. Even if I have to nebulize, which I have to nebulize, I need to watch something or read something when I'm doing it. I can't just sit and nebulize.
You are, I mean, I'm like that as well. Like would you call it like I tell myself I'm an information junkie because even when if I'm eating lunch alone, which is very often in the office, I want to read something or hear something.
Exactly. I have the same thing. I can't do it alone. I now also believe that besides the fact that I can't sit totally idle, and that's why I'm retired, yes. It gives me the luxury of working as much as I like. But I must have something to do. I don't think I could live very long if I didn't have anything to do. And I believe that I have still the capability of doing things or telling people how to do things or making suggestions or improvements.
What do you spend your time on nowadays?
Partly Maruti issues, partly I'm looking at some forest issues and futuristic issues. For example, one of the things I think about is what is going to be the safe transportation system and comfortable transportation system and affordable transportation system for the 280 million people who are registered scooter owners. If you say cars, where is the space for cars in India? For that many cars. So this thought that you should have cars of the same number like the Americans or even Europeans have 500-600 cars. It's not possible in India. The numbers are just too large with our population for that kind of thing to happen. What is the solution to this problem?
What is the solution?
I don't know, but partly I think it has to be shared transport in some form.
Or public transport?
Shared transport like Uber.
Uber, right. Got
See,
it.
we have a car. I have a car. How much do I use it? I don't think most people use the car for even 10% of its time. The rest is a waste.
And what excites you the most today?
Finding some solution. Like the next problem I have is this. India has a huge amount of agricultural waste. Huge. And the potential is even larger. With this much of agriculture in India and this many animals in India, the amount of waste we generate is huge. What are we doing with the waste? So I think the answer there is biogas and organic manure.
Recycle, renewable.
Much more renewable. That's another thing I'm trying to work on, trying to find some ways of getting this done. People are doing it, but it's not being done on a scale.
And even the burning stuff also, because there could be a better
burning is
utilization.
part of the problem.
Yes.
Reduce that also. There are lots of benefits. The soil is getting deteriorated because of the absence of renewal of any organic matter in the soil.
Yes.
Burning of crops actually ruins the soil.
It does, but people have been doing it for hundreds of years.
Sorry?
People have been doing it for hundreds of years, no?
Burning?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's making the soil worse and worse.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Because all the microorganisms which are in the soil gets killed.
Right. Got it.
So these things like this and besides the other normal stuff of Maruti and some other things.
Great. Uncle, I've just had such an amazing time talking to you, honestly. So thank you so much. It's been super exciting talking to you. You are a legend, Mr. R.C. Bhargava. Thank you so much.
Thank you.